Certainly the big focus this week has been the first part of the state capture inquiry report. Some of Acting Chief Justice Raymond Zondo's recommendations from that report is the establishment of a new anti-corruption agency. But how much appetite does the NPA in particular have to prosecute those accused and named as state capture inquiry or state capture enablers? And that's after the head of the National Special Investigating Directorate, Advocate Hermoine Cronje, resigned late last year. Let's get you some analysis on that. Professor of Public Law at the University of Pretoria, that's Koos Malan, joins us now for more. Prof, thanks very much indeed for your time. I suppose the big question in the face of these recommendations of a new anti-corruption agency, is it not the work that the NPA should already be doing?
Yeah, good morning to you. Absolutely yes. There was actually no impediment, no obstruction in the way of the NPA to have instituted prosecutions already a long time ago. But the institution of a prosecution obviously depends upon the availability of evidence in the first place, which is linked to the broader question of how strong is the investigation that has been done, how strong is the evidence, because you can only really prosecute if you have a proper basis of evidence. That's the first thing. And then secondly, do you have the necessary skillful prosecutors assisted by investigators, police and so on to actually prosecute and successfully prosecute? Because prosecution is a risky thing. Everything is not in the hands of the prosecution. People being prosecuted, especially prominent people, the kind of people that are involved in the scenarios sketched, for example, by the Zondo Commission, and which is the kind of scenario that one is confronted with whenever you deal with state capture and large-scale corruption. Those are prominent people, affluent people who can afford the best possible counsel and to very forcefully defend themselves. So if you go into a prosecution, if the NPA goes into a prosecution, they must really be on a very good basis certain about themselves so that they would know beforehand that the prosecution most probably will be successful. Because you can imagine that you embark upon a prosecution just eventually to be unsuccessful. This is not what you want to achieve. It will obviously create a very bad impression in the view of the public, and secondly, it will show that the state institutions that are supposed to be taking the responsibility for clamping down on things like corruption and so on, prove to be unable to actually do it. So, in other words, appetite on the one hand, on the side of the prosecution authority is one thing, ability is another. And I think they might have the appetite, quite certainly. But the ability, that's a different question. There has been a long history in which the ability of the prosecutorial authority has been hollowed out to such an extent that it is a vague shadow of what it used to be. That's the big problem that we're facing with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that specialist ability, perhaps in particular, insofar as prosecuting these very complicated cases is concerned, that forensic ability to go through that kind of amount of information.
Absolutely so, because the kind of case that you're dealing with here is not the kind of case that a prosecutor in a magistrate's court, for example, deal with. You know, something like a common theft or an assault case or so. Normally, these cases are very complicated. You need people in the forensic field, people who are really skillful people with a required background. In the first instance, people who are qualified, and then secondly also people with the necessary experience. And those are people that you can't just easily get. They are all available. All of that is in fact available in South Africa. There's no question about that. But unfortunately, those people are at the moment, as I see it, and I think the historical record actually shows that, at the moment that kind of ability, that kind of skill and so on is not available within the prosecutorial authority or in the police or even in some other state agencies that should actually possess these institutions, these skills. But it is possible to actually hire them. It's possible to mobilize them. They are available in South Africa in the private sector. But it's first a question of getting hold of that, mobilizing it, and getting it enlisted to the best benefit of the prosecutorial authority. Yeah, that is something that apparently hasn't been done as yet.
Prof, you know, the next question that comes to mind is we've seen the budgetary cuts within the NPA as well. You talk about the ability to go out and hire the people with the requisite skills. Do we have the money to do so? And then, the second part of my question, you talk about necessary experience for these prosecutions to be successful. Falling under necessary experience, I suppose, is also the issue of institutional memory.
Absolutely so. What normally happens in cases like this is that the individual prosecutor, the individual whoever investigator, does not act on his or her own. You're part of a team. You're part of a team that can actually support each other in order to put together a case eventually ready for prosecution. As I said, I think the people are available. As to the question of budgeting, well, you see, whenever you deal with any constitutional institution, such as the Prosecutorial Authority, you can have very well-sounding provisions in a constitution attesting to their independence, attesting to their impartiality. But in the final analysis, it depends on a variety of factors which will actually eventually indicate whether they are really competent and whether they are really impartial. If the wrong appointments have been made, and in the Prosecutorial Authority, I think at the moment, as far as the heads are concerned, the head is concerned, we don't have a problem. But over a long period of more than 10, 11, 12 years, we had the wrong people as heads of the Prosecutorial Authority. They were actually people who were on the side of state capture. And they were actually people on the side of hollowing out the ability of the Prosecutorial Authority. So that's your one problem. So in a sense, the whole issue, the whole phenomenon of state capture has been playing out not only in SA Airways, not only in Eskom, not only in all those other state institutions, state-owned enterprises and so on, but specifically also in the Prosecutorial Authority. So now the Prosecutorial Authority is actually put to a test because it's an irony actually. The Prosecutorial Authority has to act now. They are now really put to a test. A lot is actually at stake for them. They must now take the matter further. It was for the Zondo Commission to have done the job, and I think they have done a sterling job in order to collect the necessary evidence and so on. But now it must be taken further. And now it is the focus is on the Prosecutorial Authority, which unfortunately, and that's the irony, has been hollowed out also over the past 10 years, 10, 15 years, which was also in the firing line of state capture. And that is now going to be seen, I think.
Shamila Batoy, the head of the National Prosecuting Authority, already back in December last year, I suppose throwing forward to the release of the state capture inquiry report, said that the NPA is underfunded, it is overburdened, and it won't be able to prosecute all cases emanating from the state capture inquiry. Other analysts have come forward and said, be that as it may, prosecute what you can. Do some of the lower hanging fruit now so that we can get some kind of momentum going.
Yeah, I think that would, in fact, be the approach of the NPA, try to select the cases which, as you say, which are the lower-hanging fruit. In other words, the cases of prominent people in the first place, but at the same time, cases which are perhaps not that complicated as far as the evidence is concerned, and where the ability and the prospects of successfully prosecuting are, in fact, good. There might be a huge number of such cases. There's no question about that. I think the important thing is this. Firstly, make use of actually what you have in the Prosecutorial Authority. Secondly, however, that will soon prove not to be enough. I think all of us know that. Look at what the Hermoine, what's her surname now, Cronje said in this regard. All of us know it's not enough. So there's no question as far as I'm concerned that extra funds will have to be made available by government in order to hire extra people from the private sector who will be able to assist in embarking on prosecutions. And just lastly, this is not what you've asked, but I think we should add that. These people involved in state capture stole a lot of money, to put it bluntly. All of us know that. They stole a lot of money. And I think in order to actually address that, there's also the possibility, a strong possibility of civil actions. Civil actions that can actually be taken not only by the state, but civil actions that can be taken by by private institutions, institutions such as OTA and various others, who can, under Section 38 of the Constitution, actually institute civil claims to reclaim money that has been stolen, and they can do it for the benefit of the public at large. There is such a possibility, and that is a way in which the private sector can also get involved, not so much in terms of a prosecution, but in terms of a civil action claiming money that has been stolen. And I think that is, over the next year or so, and even more, going to prove to be a very important strategy that has to be embarked upon.
Yeah, let's remember that the second and third parts of the State Capture Inquiry report are due at the end of Jan and at the end of February. Professor Koos Malan, let me thank you for your time this morning. He's with University of Pretoria, public law professor. And of course, all eyes now on our prosecutorial agencies, in response to the first part of the State Capture Inquiry report being released just this week.